Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't really know where you are in the world, but wherever you are, thank you for joining me today. I have with me Mel Tawahide right now that I am going to be engaging in a Q&A, hoping that this conversation can be something of that can result in a progressive outcome for the future of Ethiopia. But before I get into that, I want to just introduce briefly Mel, who is the founder and the CEO of Infinity Wealth, as well as an incredible historian and a filmmaker who has made 8 documentary films about Ethiopia. And I just feel really, really honored, Mel, that you're carving out time to sit down with me. So I'm going to open this up to you if you want to add, if you want to say anything else about yourself, please go ahead and take a few moments to do that.
Thank you, Sina Mariam. Really, I am also honored to be invited by you, especially a young Ethiopian lady who's intelligent and who really seeks the truth to where you can find out how we can move forward, especially support our people here in America and in Ethiopia and make things better, especially for the younger generation.
Absolutely.
As you know, we have a country that resilient. We've suffered a lot, but at the same time, we see the future to bring something beautiful, something nice. So all this suffering will amount to something that will really move Ethiopia forward, and that's my hope.
Great. Well, thank you, Mel. One thing that really compelled me to wanting to sit down with yourself and other individuals who know a lot about Ethiopia, to say the least, is due to what's been happening in Ethiopia, due to the conflict that's going on right now. I feel like a lot of us, younger generation diasporas, we're a little lost and we're a little confused. And what I am seeing is so much tension. And it really saddens my heart that this level of tension and this level of anger and division has trickled down to us. I could be naive, but I've lived in this bubble where I felt like those divisive, hate-ridden, elements of Ethiopia were left in the past. It was maybe history. So it's a reality check for me to see what's happening amongst the diasporas right now. And I found myself reaching out to various individuals to seek understanding. So I guess without having to say more about that, I wanted to ask you, can you briefly help us have an understanding of what's happening in Ethiopia? In other words, what is the conflict essentially about?
Well, the conflict now has come to this level because, as you know, Ethiopia was run by Tigray's People's Liberation Front, which was founded somewhere in 1975 in the jungles of Tigray. They started out as liberation fighters, and they were doing some good things, helping the farmers and stuff like that. But at the same time, they were doing some nasty stuff also, like robbing banks and things like that to finance some of the things that they were doing. Fast forward to 1991, they took over all of Ethiopia. Ethiopian people supported them, some of them willingly, some of them not so willingly. But they ended up really taking over Ethiopia and running the country. Unfortunately, they didn't run it more, not significantly different than the previous ones. They were kept most of the communist laws. Land was still confiscated. Freedom of speech was given for a few months and then was taken back right away. And then to make it worse, they also disbanded the internal boundaries and created a new boundary based on language. And the previous one was 14 provinces. Now they broke it down to a very difficult language-based boundaries internally. and divided Ethiopia into 9 or 10. I'm not exactly sure how many regions that they put in. And so that set Ethiopia for really a disaster where all the ethnic groups were fighting for meager resources. So now the competition for water, for grass, for wildlife, for cattle, all became very difficult because now everybody is just going to say them and against us. And so the designers and the architects of this plan was Tigray's People's Liberation Front, sometimes known as TPLF. And so that situation exasperated the country, even though they brought some level of tranquility, some level of peace. It was really not a good, long-lasting situation. They did it mostly by force and by top-down orders. And in order to execute some of the stuff, they had to do some horrendous things, like constantly torturing people and pulling fingernails, beating people in jails, rape, you name it. And that made it very difficult. And so the people revolted around 2018. And at that point, it was completely ungovernable country. So EPLF, or the EPRDF, which is the party of 4 different ethnic groups that they put together, appointed this young man to bring some change and to bring some peace and possibly reform. And even TPLF endorsed him, and he was able to become the new prime minister. So fast forward from 2018, TPLF decided, they took a U-turn and said, we are losing a lot of power, we don't like the new arrangement, and they retreated back to Tigray. And so at every turn, they try to make it very difficult to execute some of these reforms. So they made it very difficult for Abiy Ahmed. And there was a lot of attempt on his own life, all kinds of funding because they have looted a lot of money. So they made it possible to finance all kinds of surrogates around the country to destabilize Ethiopia and Abiy. So a lot of unrest within the Romo region, unrest in other parts of Ethiopia, it really made it very difficult to change or reform any of the planned reforms. And so that became increasingly difficult. And now what brought this to the final conclusion here to boil over is that somewhere in August, the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, an old Marxist group, decided they were going to not accept the postponement of the election. So the election was postponed due to COVID. And that wasn't done by Abiy, by the way. It was done by the election committee, independent election committee that's run by Dr. Burtukan, a very capable lawyer who was really tortured by TPLF in the past, but she came to the US and pursued her education. I think she went to Harvard. And so they said there is no way they can run a reasonable and meaningful election with the COVID because they don't have the resources. They don't have the protections that requires to try and run an election in a country of 110 million people. But Tigray's People's Liberation Front did not accept the postponement. So they started out with not accepting the postponement and decided they're going to run their own election. So basically, state of California, where you are, decided that they're not going to accept November 3 as the election day. They're going to do their own election on July 7th. So, and no self-respecting federal government would allow this to go on for too long. So they went ahead and had their election, and they had another fake election where they said they won 97% of the votes in Tigray. And so nothing happened there. The government was still trying to find a way to get out of this quagmire. They've been, asking them to negotiate and to talk around the table and try to find to avoid war and to avoid death, which everybody in Ethiopia is tired of. And so unfortunately, these guys kept on pushing it and pushing it. And then somewhere in August, September timeline, the Ethiopian government decided they're going to change the currency. So this other guys, Tigray People's Liberation Front, have 130 billion of Ethiopian currency that they have looted. And that was basically rendered useless when the currency was changed to the new currency. Because then now they have to have financial documentation, justification as to where the money came from. They cannot deposit X amount of money. X amount of money can be withdrawn. So they made it difficult for them to bring like 20 million birr and deposit it in one day. You are only allowed to do 500,000. So that basically rendered all that looted currency useless. So Tigray's People Liberation Front was using that money to fund all this uprising around Ethiopia, and so they were losing a lot of money. And that really upset them. And that really drove them to desperation, I would say, because they attacked the northern command of Ethiopian army that was located in Maikadra in Tigray, and so killed a lot of soldiers while they were sleeping, which, by the way, Tigray's People Liberation Front has done that always. It's not as customary for them to do that. They have done that when EPRP was sleeping. They killed them all, and they did the same thing to EDU. So they have the history of that. And so Ethiopian government now has to galvanize its people to enforce law and order in Tigray. So basically, it's a law enforcement operation, and I hope things will come to an end fairly quickly.
Which brings me to my next thought, which is, how do we separate TPLF from the people of Tigray? Because there seems to be blurriness with that. On one hand, you have people that are saying people of Tigray equal TPLF. On the other hand, you have people separating themselves from TPLF, but still trying to understand what about the innocent civilians that are hurting from this conflict. Where do we go from here? So then that way we move forward having a very clear understanding of executions that must be carried out by a government for a better future versus, is this crime against humanity in general? Because people seem to have these blurry understandings and they're coming from different angles. There's a lot of misinformation that's being spread. I know that's a lot of questions that I lumped up in one, so hopefully it makes sense. If not, I can further clarify.
No, it's all clear, Sena Mariam. By the way, you haven't told me any of the questions. You didn't tell me what you were going to ask me, so.
Which is great, because I know when I had reached out to you, I did say, do you want me to briefly go over some of these questions? And you said, no, let's just go for them. And so thank you for really having this very organic dialogue, because I think that's the only way that we can reach each other's hearts. And my hope is that we're able to do that at the same time, gain valid and credible information.
All right. Number one, I just want your audience to understand that one of the greatest people in Ethiopia are Tigray people. And I really mean that. They have taken a lot of harm for Ethiopia. They have bled. They were the first ones to always get attacked, whether it's British or Italians, Egypt, or anyone else. And so they have suffered for Ethiopia. That is no question about that. And there are a lot of Tigray people that have really sacrificed a lot for what we call Ethiopia today. And don't forget, this is also the beginning of the Aksumite Empire. And the Aksumite empires are the ones that really founded Ethiopia. So really, nobody can get away from that. But the bottom line is that sometimes people do things that are not beneficial to even their own people. So this kind of, to give it a little bit of historical perspective, even as late as 1935, the king of Tigray, there were two kings, by the way, in Tigray. There was Eastern Tigray and Western Tigray. And those two kings are just gives you the dichotomy and the contradiction of Ethiopian life. One, his name is Lu'ul Ras Siyum Mangasha, also a field marshal, one of the very few people who was named field marshal because of his military capability and the kind of courage that Rasiyum showed to Ethiopia. And then, not far from them, the other king is the Jazmach Haile Selassie Guksa, ironically, same name as Haile Selassie the emperor. He married Haile Selassie's daughter, ended up abusing her like crazy, and she ended up dying young. And then to make it worse, now, Haile Selassie said nothing about this, the emperor that is, brought his daughter and buried her. This guy went ahead also, sold out Ethiopia, gave a lot of critical military information to the Italians, and also surrendered with 20,000 Ethiopian soldiers. And he went and joined General De Bono, and Mussolini congratulated him, gave him a lot of stuff and things like that. And that's what one cousin did. These are all both from Johannes, Emperor Johannes' great-grandkids.
I was just going to ask.
Yes, both of them. So one is Ras Siyum Mangasha, an incredible Ethiopian, was unbelievable. He's the greatest hero of Ethiopian-Italian War, of the Second Ethiopian-Italian War. Of course, there were people like Ras Makonnen and things like that, and Ras Alula in the First Ethiopian-Italian War. But on the second one, which was 1935, this was the greatest military achievement was done by Ras Siyum Mangasha. He killed 11,000 Italians, and Mussolini was so upset with him that he was the first one to be brought to Rome, and they put him on a martial court. As he's a military person and is a field marshal, he was court-martialed by Mussolini. And Mussolini asked all the generals what they need to do with this guy who killed 11,000 or 10,800 to be exact, Italian black shirts. The Italian black shirts are Mussolini followers. And the generals, the Italian generals, all suggested or all said that he needs to be hanged in the piazza this afternoon. So we just need to take him to the center of the city and hang him. And he asked all the generals, everybody said he needs to be hanged. But Mussolini said something that is just hard to even believe that it came from the mouth of Mussolini. Mussolini said, I heard you, I heard everybody's recommendation. This guy is not only a greatest army guy, but he's a hero. In his country, he would have been given medals after medals for doing what he has done. And he reminded them, this is the nephew of Alula Abaneka, the lion of Dugali that killed 500 Italians before him. And so he says, no, we don't kill heroes and lions like Rasio. And in fact, he told the Italian generals, all of you can learn about love of a country from Rasio. And Rasio was exonerated and was given the best what was given to any Italian generals. He was given a car, he was given a villa. He lived in Italy till the war was about to start again. But he came back again to Ethiopia and evicted the Italians out of Tigray and out of Eritrea. And this is the kind of Ethiopian contradiction that we always have. So to get back to your question, TPLF and Tigray are not the same. Tigray people are beautiful people, but they have suffered under TPLF dictatorship for 46 years. They've been blackmailed. They've been beaten up. Some of their parents were killed. They killed a lot of people. They buried people alive. They did a lot of awful, awful things to people of Tigray in particular. And so they are worried. And so then they get into the level of family situation where if you're not a supporter of TPLF, you don't get to get invited to a wedding. You don't get to get a wife. You don't get invited to anything. And so they make it very difficult for people to even live. So people don't say much about their discontent with TPLF because a lot of the people that didn't live to tell. So they are really scared. And so people have to understand. But other than that, Tigray people are really one of the most orderly, hardworking people in Ethiopia.
Okay. Well, thank you for that too. So it's safe to say there is a bit of a misconception, even amongst the people of Tigray, in terms of how they identify or associate with TPLF. For me, at least, it seems like as a governing agency, TPLF seems to be very divisive. But that still does not explain to me where this deep-rooted hatred comes from. Why can't we separate what happened in the past to where we are now and how we can move forward?
Okay, that's an excellent question. Excellent question. So the idea of separating yourself from your history is impossible. So you can forget about that.
Okay.
Just completely forget it.
Okay.
Yeah, because your history is your history. It's up to you to take interest, to study it.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to each and every individual. If you want to be Ethiopian, this is what you have to do. You have to study Ethiopian history. Yes, there will be conflicting information here, there, and everywhere, but most of it is minor. A lot of it is historical content are really recorded properly. And there is a historical and scientific method to study those. And you make very little mistakes, really, if you really understand the sequences and how things came about. Now, what TPLF did the last 46 years was to fabricate a non-existing problem that the Orthodox Church was the problem. And I'm not saying the Orthodox Church didn't need reform. I'm not saying that it could not do a little better in exposing itself to more progressive ideas and changing times and things like that. But they zeroed in on that to galvanize Marxist type of young people back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And so they also said, let's pick up a tribe and make it an enemy. And they picked up Amara. So they drove their agenda on those two things. Let's destroy the Orthodox Church and destroy Amara leadership. By then, of course, by 1991, Amara was already really marginalized because they've already lost their land, they've lost all their guns, all their arms was confiscated by the communists, by Mengistu. It's not the fault of Tigray People's Liberation Front that Amaras were made poor. They were already poor by the time 1991 came. So Amara really was never the problem, but they made this artificial problem. And so if the children and the young people are always being told, Amara is there to destroy you, Amara is to undermine Tigray, Amara doesn't respect you, stuff like that. So you grew up with that kind of paranoia, and it makes it very difficult for young people to differentiate. You know, maybe Amara is not my enemy. Maybe Amara is poor just like me and trying to make a living. Maybe Amara is also struggling with a lot of stuff. And so you have to, it's the responsibility of the young person. I don't care if you are Amara or if you are Tigray or if you are Oromo, you really have the responsibility to take the time to study if you are considering yourself Ethiopian. If you don't, then just be an American. Live your life like every African American. You'll be fine there too. But the key is, if you want to be involved in Ethiopian stuff, you really have to take the time and study the history. You haven't been reading anything about Ethiopia, then all of a sudden says, oh, what all these names and this and that, E this, E liberation that, E liberation, T liberation, whatever. It doesn't matter. It was a total Marxist mess that was created for the last 46 years. So you have to learn how to decipher through that and be a better learner and document story for your children. Don't go into the same kind of confusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were confused. You don't have to be confused. You got to make it a little better for your kids, and your kids are going to make it a lot better for their kids. But in the process, it's not a good thing to lose an identity as a beautiful identity as Ethiopian. Mm-hmm. Courageous, kind, independent, strong people that were never being subjugated by anybody. And we're not going to start to get subjugated by our own people.
Historically, all these different ethnic groups have been marginalized at one point or another. The different ethnic groups either have been the oppressor or the oppressed. We've all done it. So I guess now I'm thinking, how do we still move forward? And what I am understanding with Abiy and his new administration is this idea of uniting Ethiopia, where every ethnic group is respected and included. The rights of these individuals is honored and exercised, but at the same time, being a united Ethiopian. What is so difficult about that? Why is that so difficult to comprehend, accept? Why are there people who feel the need to separate and self-govern? Because there's
okay. Yes. The thing about it is that in a country like ours, or Russia, or China, or Ethiopia, we lived under kingdom for 4,000 years. So we are really difficult for us to convert to democracy. Russia has been trying to change to democracy since 1917. They've been trying for the 103 years now, and they haven't succeeded. You have China, who's a communist kingdom now. That's the only way they can go forward, because if the minute they let go of communism, they probably will go back into fiefdom. So it's probably a good idea for them to stay communist. So sometimes a culture like ours takes a long time to learn respect of others, to learn democracy, to speak and let others speak, and to live and let others live. As we say in German, they say Leben und Leben lassen. So you live and you let other people live. That takes a little bit of exercising. So that takes a little bit of time. Maybe in your generation, you guys will learn.
I hope so.
That's for sure is going to get better and better. So the other thing is, why do they want to separate? Well, they started out as a revolutionary rebels. They started out like helping the farmers, working with the people, being kind to the villagers and carrying water for them and so forth. And then a kind of Robin Hood. But then they found out that they can't run the place. Then they turned into kind of thieves and became an SS, Henry Schindler, trying to terrorize people and start robbing banks and things like that. So things turned bad on a lot of them very quickly, because they found out that it's a very secretive organization. Nobody knows who the leaders are. Nobody knows where the money goes. Nobody knows where the money comes. Nobody knows what happened to a certain person. So if you are in the some liberation front, and I don't see Sinamariam, I don't ask, because I think you might have been killed. Or maybe you run off to Sudan. I don't know. So I'm so scared I won't ask. So one by one, you'll be taken out. And so we lived in this kind of dictatorship that either came from the central government, like Mengistu, who was killing everybody and telling parents to pay for their bodies, for the children's bodies if they want to collect the bodies, for the bullet fee. So the brutality of our culture is really very heart-wrenching. It's very difficult for a normal person to understand. But most of it comes from fear, lack of knowledge, uncertain about certain situations, and be frightened. A lot of them are frightened. So they do crazy, horrendous stuff and start hacking people away because they're so scared. Just like the one we just heard in Maikadra, 600 people were hacked to death. So maybe those youth were scared that they were losing something, or Walqait was going to go back to Amara or to Gondar. I don't know what they panicked about, but they ended up just hacking people and hanging them and killing them with hammers and knives and things like that. So people do crazy things when they are frightened. Okay, so you have to understand it is not going to be, it's going to stay with us, but we can make it better little by little.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Which brings me to, part of making this a little better is also doing our part, seeking information, seeking understanding. And like you said, it takes time. Our generation, we're in this world where relevance matters. People want to stay in the now and in the trend. And so sometimes the biggest struggle that I've had on social media, and I'm constantly speaking against, is just because you see a post that emotionally arouses you, don't repost it and expose it to the hundreds of people that are your followers or your supporters without verifying the integrity of that information, because that's problematic. And the truth is, I had to pause myself too, because there's been posts that I saw immediately that are fabricated, sometimes very difficult to decipher, is this real or not? But when you're emotionally aroused, you want to react. When it hits close to home, you're going to react without even thinking twice about it. And there seems to be no way to stop that, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this question because you might have some kind of suggestion. Is there a way for us to mitigate, the propaganda, the conspiracy theory? What kind of suggestion or recommendation do you have for young people that are not thinking twice about a specific information that's on the media and spreading it? And I'm not even going to go to the people that are doing it intentionally, because that's a whole other can of worms I can't comprehend at this point. But I'm talking about the people that are hurting and that are reacting, because those are the people that are seeking to some degree. They just don't know how to go after the right kind of information. They don't know how to stay regulated. So they're reacting. But this reaction is also, it's like a wildfire. It's spreading the anger and the hatred amongst our generation, and we have to find a way to just kind of put water on that fire.
Definitely, Sina Mariam, it breaks my heart just to see how young people have to be dragged into this. And unfortunately, it was the same when I was young. Now you guys are going to pay your price, and because we are a very secretive society, nobody told you exactly what went down, and somebody up there decides what is right for you to hear and not to hear. And so we have been a regulated society, there was lack of openness and transparency. All that created and exasperated our problem to where it is today. But my advice, especially for diaspora and the kids and the young people that are living in America, know that we are all hurting. Nobody's going to enjoy to see your own family getting killed. Nobody. Don't care if you're Tigray, I don't care if you're Gondar, I don't care what you are. Nobody wants to see his own family dying, because all of us are related. We have the same DNA. So killing one another is not going to solve any of our problems. So just know that everybody is hurting. It's not only you, but everybody's hurting. So when you understand that everybody's hurting, then your pain becomes less. It becomes manageable. So everybody's hurting. Now, how do we tell the difference between the good news and the bad news and the fabricated ones and so forth? You can't. I mean, there's no exact science to that, except you study hard and try to identify with some historical background and back it up, or otherwise don't listen to that particular statement because it really doesn't represent the truth. You need truth in order to make to move Ethiopia or the country or Tigray or Gondar or anybody forward. So we have to be able to decipher to what is historically correct and what's not. And then the other thing they really have to be concerned about, there are outsiders. You're sitting in England or sitting in America talking garbage about a place you don't know. Some white people living a great life and then having this black people walk each other, that's almost criminal. And fanning that hatred of one another on this side or the other side, it doesn't matter which side you are. It's really the best thing that they can do is just really to stay out of this and let Ethiopians figure this out themselves. So the other thing we really have to learn as young people is to make sure that we don't let our emotion go wild on us. Because if you do, you will miss a lot of opportunity in America. You'll end up harming somebody. You'll have a criminal record. Your credit will be ruined. Your FICA will be destroyed. You will not get a job like mine if you want to be a money manager. You would have to be a parking lot attendant or security guard. So if you really want to get somewhere in life, make sure that you don't mess up your life. It's bad enough that we, older generation, have messed up our lives through communism, through changing our names and all kinds of crazy stuff, impersonation. What normally would be here an illegal stuff, Ethiopians were doing it on a routine basis. So those type of things will ruin your life in America. So stay away from emotion. I've seen on some videos, some Eritrean or Tigray or Amara kids or whatever, just fighting in a nightclub and beating each other up. I could not believe this. You have to stop downloading your parents' anger. They have unresolved angers. Some of it trauma. They've been tortured by either Mengistu or Tigray Liberation Front. They've been tortured. So they haven't dealt with it, but it's not your responsibility to deal with that, except to tell them, please, deal with this problem yourself, okay? The young people, for example, did not have a good relationship with their parents. They don't speak to one another as an equal. So they talk to each other like the old Ethiopian way, trying to talk down your child. Child is not going to listen to you. You got to learn how to respect your child. And the child also have to respect this other person who speaks a broken English. And you're ashamed of him to bring him as a parent to your school because he doesn't speak English. So all those type of things have to be rectified from all sides so that you guys can have a more productive life than even the one we had. So in America, it's a very dangerous place to fix your problem. Once you get in trouble, it's very difficult. You start with DUI, and your life is down to 2. DUI is $20,000. And then it's downward after that. And so we want to make sure that we don't get too excited about this. Know that, pray for people in Tigray and Ethiopia that they will be okay and they will come out of this. It might take a little bit of time, but it will clear itself out fairly quickly.
Those are some powerful words that you really shared. Speaking of downloading our parents' trauma, couldn't have said it any better. That's in psychology called transgenerational trauma. And as a trauma-ridden population, there's obviously a lot of education needed in terms of what that is. And as a population, we need to recognize that is an issue. Whether someone is a survivor of trauma, like our parents who have been in these traumatic situations, or the recipient of trauma, like the younger generation who has not been in the trauma but happens to download, like you said, their parents' trauma, we're stuck in this cycle of competing whose pain is greater. And this idea of, if I validate your pain, then somehow that invalidates mine. And I'm talking about my Oromo brothers and sisters, my Tigray brothers and sisters, my Amara brothers and sisters. When we hear something happening to these ethnic groups that we don't identify with, a good way to gauge where we stand is, does it hit you? Does it hurt you the same way it hurts when it's your own ethnic group? And if you're not connecting with human suffering, no matter who, the same way, there is something wrong with that picture. There is something seriously wrong with that picture, because we have become desensitized to other people's pain, and desensitization has become our coping mechanism, which is a human problem. This is not a Amara, a Tigray, or Oromo problem. This is a human problem. So I truly hope that dialogues like this will ignite the curiosity in young people to seek understanding, to seek clarity, and to have that inner drive to want to be better than our parents. You know, the world is in a lot of pain, and the world is suffering, and there's so much going on, and everybody has so much to say. And we can't control what happened in the past. We may not be even able to control what's going on right now, but whether we want to walk around hurting other people or not, that is a personal choice. You know, when people hurt, I feel like majority people fall into two different categories. One category is, I'm sure you've heard of the saying, hurt people hurt people. Another category is they become wounded healers. Whether you want to walk around and hurt other people, add to the problem, or decide that you want to be a wounded healer, that is a personal choice. And I think that's where I'm trying to reach the people. I'm not a politician. I don't know anything about, I shouldn't say anything. I don't know enough about politics to say or to speak on that in depth. But I do understand what empathy is. And I do know that pain has the power to teach us something about being empathetic to each other, empathetic to human sufferings, and be able to connect and relate to each other on that. I feel for my Tigray brothers and sisters who are displaced. I feel for my Amara brothers and sisters who are mourning the people that they lost due to the massacre. I feel for my Oromo brothers and sisters who have died for protesting and who have been historically marginalized. So I think we have to get back to the root of being human, the quality of humanness and what that is. And so I don't want to rant and I don't want to talk too much about this. I think we get the point. You, Mel, having a little bit of everything, the human connection element and the historical knowledge. How do we shift our focus? How do we shift our mind from this anger and hurt that we're just really trying to hold on to, making it very difficult for us to be progressive, for us to be objective, for us to be critical? What advice or what input do you have for us?
Okay, one of the things really that have helped me throughout my life is, and this is not really mine, it's my father that told me about it. And my father was a very wise senator, wise governor, a wise, all-around wise person. And he had a lot of American friends who came to Ethiopia to build universities. And he had me translate sometimes to them. And so I have learned something from my dad, and that was to ask every person, what is the source of this information? Where did you get it? A lot of times, 90% of the time, my father used to neutralize that information from the person that gave them. And he says, I heard it from this. And he said, no, you couldn't have heard it from him because I was with him 5 minutes ago. And so that starts to unwind the web of lie that the person was trying to fabricate or make it hard or try to badmouth a person and things like that. As you know, we are a very secretive society, and we love mongering, rumor mongering. And so we don't verify information. So learn how to verify. Why are you saying that? So the guy will come in. So for example, a bunch of kids come in. One other one will say, oh, this guy is a TPLF. Yeah. Where did you get that information? How do you know he's TPLF? Or say he's Oromo separatist. You ask him, where did you get that information? Do you really know him? And a lot of times you find out that he's not Oromo separatist. He's probably said something about Oromo marginalization, and now he's loused into that bucket of Oromo separatist. And so real good Oromo person who used to be actually own a lot of Ethiopian land, and they were very wealthy before the communists took it from them. Oromos were the richest people because they have big, beautiful land. That's how Amaras and Tigrays will go to this Oromo country and live a better life because they know where they came from is really hard, mountainous region. And so when they go to Oromo country, they live a good life and they can work hard and do that. So learn how to ask, where did you get the information? Don't get excited about somebody telling you something about somebody that is maybe true, but most probably not true. Heard it from somebody to somebody to somebody. So that will take a lot of the anxiety away. Number two, don't identify with any group. Just be kind, be good to everybody, and be fair and equitable. I don't identify with Amaras. I don't identify with Tigray. My mom is Oromo. My dad is Amara. So I don't have anybody to identify with. A lot of Ethiopians are like that. They're either Gurage and Amara, Amara and Tigray. They're like that. Majority of Ethiopians are like that. And so we don't have anybody to identify with. So we don't get involved in those type of talk. And they will tell you, just take it easy. We know certain people have suffered, like the Amaras have suffered significantly because they were identified as enemy, public enemy number one since 1974 by TPLF and EPLF. Eritrean People's Liberation Front has also identified them as enemy number one. But what makes the two different is at least the Eritreans took responsibility and owned that lie. They said we fabricated that story to help us fight and galvanize people. And they also said, the Eritreans also said that we had enough time to reverse that lie, but we didn't do that either. So they have acknowledged and took ownership of that disgraceful act. So when you continue to perpetrate the lie, you're going to get into more trouble. And that's how Tigray Liberation Front got itself into a lot more trouble now. And I hope they will be able to come out of this, and Tigray people will separate themselves from this particular heinous group and be able to live a good life. So the people here have to learn how not to go like a herd. Don't identify with anybody. Just be kind to everyone. Give everybody a chance. Listen to their story and wish them well. And everything will be okay. Don't get emotionally involved because you might end up hurting somebody. And the law here will pursue you to the nth degree and will put you out of business. And your life will be totally messed up. forever. So don't do harmful things. Don't post things that are not right. Don't inflame situation. Don't put fire in situation. And you can come and blame me and say, Mel, oh, you posted stuff. Yes, I do, but I have researched it. I've studied it. I see that it's reasonable and fair and customary. Within the customary and reasonable, I stay. So if you stay within that, I think you're going to be okay. So don't get too wild up and too excited about anybody in Ethiopia. They're going to be fine. I just returned from Ethiopia. It's a beautiful country now. They have freedom of speech. Anybody can say whatever they want. They have internet. Yes, Tigray is shut down right now because Tigray Liberation was going to use it to create some more havoc. But they shut it down just temporarily, and I'm sure it's going to be open pretty quick. But it's better time for Ethiopia. And so stay the course, be honest, because this is not 1974. The Tigray farmers didn't know anything in 1974. They will believe you anything you tell them. But they're not going to believe you anything now. This is 2020. They will quickly find out on the internet that Amara is not their enemy. Amara is the same struggling farmer like them, who's trying to eke a living out of a mountain. So Amara and Tigray in particular are two highly suffering people who were born in a land that is so difficult to farm. And so these two people really should help each other, not be at each other's throat. So I hope the young people will understand that and just take their time, take a deep breath when you hear some news about Ethiopia, and take your time and say, I'm not going to take it out on anybody. I'm just going to pray and hope that God will work through this. Right?
Absolutely. Emotions are instinctive and they're not always rational because of which part of the brain they are first activated. But emotions, when they're used properly, they work in partnership with our higher thinking, with our ability to assess a situation. They can do that. They can serve as a signaling agent to really direct us in the right way. So I guess what I took from what you said is don't be impulsive, because emotions sometimes, if they're not used properly, it can really cloud your intelligence. One thing that came up for me as you're speaking is, I think it's beautiful to be optimistic and hopeful about the future of Ethiopia and to, keep calm. Everything will be fine. It's beautiful to hear that. But at the same time, a difficult one for people who may find it very hard to comprehend those words because maybe they have family members that they haven't been able to speak to for the last 2-3 weeks, right? When words like it's going to be okay is said, it's not to dismiss or invalidate the fear and the hurt that you're in. What I am hearing is there is light at the end of this tunnel, this really dark and scary time. There's light at the end of that. Is that what I'm hearing, Mel?
Yeah, exactly right, Sinamariam. There is light at the end of the tunnel. When you're going through it, it is very difficult. And I can appreciate people that have their families in Makale. I can appreciate people that have families right around the vicinity, whether it's housing or Adwa. Any of these places are just within a 20-30 kilometers diameter. And it's a beautiful country, beautiful people. I think Tigray will come back, become a better place. Tigray will have a better life. Will be able to work, and hopefully they'll be able to resolve some of their own problems with their cousins in Eritrea so that they can have access to the ports. Because losing the ports was a big loss to Mekelle. The biggest loser is Mekelle, because now they used to be able to get stuff from Massawa, which is only 4 hours drive. Now they're getting it from Djibouti, which is 2 days. It's costing a lot of money. It's costing a lot of anger. This anger is not coming out of, it's a very big price tag on it. Just being angry is not going to help you. You got to calm yourself down. You got to take responsibility for what you have done, just like what the Eritreans did. They took responsibility. They said, we fabricated story that Amara was the enemy. But that was the only way we could galvanize the people at that time. And then fast forward to when we became independent, we had enough time to change that, but we didn't do that either. So we are to blame on 2 counts. And they took responsibility, and life is great. Now Eritreans are happy and back friendship again. And I think they can do the same with Tigray. Tigray is actually the closest people to them because they are cousins and they speak the same language, Tigrinya. So I'm hoping and pray that everything will work out. Everything will calm down. I want to tell young people, stop the talking big, stop threatening, stop that I'll kill you, burn you, and this and that. It's illegal in this country. Threatening people itself, it's unethical, but also if somebody presses you, it's illegal. You can't do that. So we got to be mindful. Even though we are angry, we can't just be going around spending our negative energy on those type of things. We will pray for everybody. I think Tigray will be okay. And we also pray for the Ethiopian forces that are going to be getting missiles shot at them from building tops. They have wired up every building in Mekelle. And so these people are unbelievable, because they should say, whatever it is, it looks like we have lost 90% of the real estate, and we're just going to go home and save the people. They don't seem to even want to do that, because even a dictator like Mengistu, who killed a lot of people, in the end had the nerve, had the decency to walk away and run to Zimbabwe, whatever it was, so people don't die in great numbers in Addis. So really, we need to think and rethink about what we're doing. Things will get better. Don't get excited, okay? And then don't aggravate Tigray people either. Don't call them names. Don't tell them this, that, the other. They have nothing to do with TPLF. They lived their life with honor and respect. They respected Ethiopia. They never bargained for TPLF or Tigray Liberation Communist thugs to come in and ruin their lives upside down. But they are in this type of predicament. They've taken their flag and give them a communist flag. Nobody asked them if that's the flag they want. So you really have to be kind, not to be harsh, not to be critical to any of your family members in particular, because all of us are related to Tigray. All of us have got the same blood. So really be kind to one another. This will pass. Pray for everybody, for all the combatants, that God will have this come out in a least possible cost to people, to human life, and to property.
Wow. Well, thank you. We covered a lot, and this has been really insightful and something that I know I benefited from. And I just hope that other diasporas like myself, they can take a lot from this conversation. So I want to say again, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. This really speaks volumes. Not all of us grow up with having balanced and credible information shared with us that we can take and pass on to other people also.
Thank you, Sana Mariam. Thank you. And we need intelligent and educated people like you that are going to make a difference, especially girls that are going to take the leadership positions, make Ethiopia a better place, take the girls. The girls are a little bit more level-headed. then the boys seem to be a little bit disturbed and creating havoc and stuff like that. And the girls need to really rise up and take control of the situation. And a lot of times you can stop enabling the boys, enabling this misbehavior, enabling bad behaviors, alcohol, fights, and what have you. And just take care of each other and take care of your families. Once you take care of your families here in diaspora, your family is going to be okay. We're not going to be on the evening news. We're going to be remembered for doing some great things, like I am here in Denver. So really take care of yourself. Know that you don't want to make a lot of mistakes, especially over something that happened 8,000 miles away. You have no control. You can read about it and stuff like that. I can get emotionally involved because I grew up there. And I know the politics, I know the language, I know the history and stuff like that. But even I shouldn't be getting involved to the point where it's going to ruin my life here in America. So please, please, please be measured, be thoughtful, and be careful with everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mel.